DIRT TRAX TV is sponsored by Polaris, think outside. Can-Am, follow your path. Yamaha, revs your heart. And by Honda Power Sports, power your dreams, whatever the terrain.
Before I even get started, I'm just going to address the two elephants in the room. Yes, this is a motorcycle. And no, we don't normally test motorcycles. Also, yes, this is a CFMOTO motorcycle. And while that might surprise a lot of people in North America, if you live overseas, it's not surprising at all because CFMOTO has been making motorcycles for a long time. The company was founded in 1989 and has been building motorcycles of all sizes, as well as ATVs and side-by-sides ever since. What this means is that while CFMOTO motorcycles are relatively new to us, they are not new at building motorcycles. From the very second this IBEX 800 rolled off the trailer at our office, literally every DIRT TRAX staffer was blown away by how high quality and refined it looked and felt. If this is how CFMOTO motorcycles are built, I have absolutely no complaints. I do want to talk about why we think it makes sense for DIRT TRAX to test a motorcycle like the IBEX 800 Explorer. Yes, it is intended to go off-road, but there's a lot more to it than that. We know from our own market research and that of other firms also that ATV and side-by-side owners also own a plethora of other power sports vehicles. From watercraft to snowmobiles to motorcycles, if you own an ATV or side-by-side, it's very likely you own something else as well. We also know that the adventure class of motorcycles is one of the fastest growing in the industry, so it only makes sense that a large number of ATV and side-by-side buyers would either own one already or be seriously considering one. Now, I personally know this because I'm one of those people. I've ridden motorcycles for many years. So far, without exception, the bikes I've owned have been sport bikes or naked bikes. But even I have to admit, the appeal of an adventure bike like the IBEX 800 is pretty strong. Being able to ride comfortably all day on whatever type of road surface I feel like while hauling a pile of my stuff in sealed hard bags, well, that just seems like a perfect combination. All versions of the IBEX 800 are powered by a 94 horsepower 799cc parallel twin cylinder engine with a 270-degree crank. This means that while it is a parallel twin, it sounds more like a V-twin, which is good because V-twins sound friggin' amazing. But what's interesting is that this is the same engine as KTM's 790 parallel twin. KTM and CFMOTO have worked together to develop this engine, and it's used in multiple places across both of their lines. It also has a drive-by-wire throttle and 6 different riding modes. Now, these riding modes don't just adjust the drive-by-wire throttle curve though. They also adjust certain parameters like front and rear ABS, both cornering and regular, and both dynamic and standard traction control. On paved surfaces, I kept it in sport mode with all electronic interventions turned on. In the dirt, I pretty much stuck to all-terrain plus mode with all the electronic interventions turned off. This worked for me, but there are other options to suit any riding style. Now, this 800's power feels a little soft on the bottom thanks in large part to its 56.8 pound-feet of torque peaking at 7,800 RPM. But power builds quickly past 5,000 RPM, and when you hit 7,000 RPM, things get real exciting. Passing on the highway was never a problem, and cruising at 70 miles per hour was comfortable with only the slightest vibrations coming through the handlebars. Off-road, the power was very manageable and never felt intimidating or too abrupt. It was easy to maintain a steady speed and throttle inputs felt smooth and controlled. If I had to pick on one thing about this engine, it would be how it idles when it's cold. Now, before the engine builds some heat, the idle is very rough and uneven, and this continues on as you let the clutch out in first gear. Once the engine builds some heat though, this seems to go away completely. My ride impressions of the IBEX 800 are entirely positive on the pavement. It has stable and confidence-inspiring handling in the corners, even when speeds get higher. The suspension is supportive and not wallowy, though a little bit harsh on the smaller, sharper bumps. I do have to say that the off-road handling of the IBEX 800 left something to be desired though. It felt unstable on loose surfaces, and the front end felt like it wanted to wash out in the sand or really loose rocks or gravel. Now, I'm not sure how much of this is the actual bike itself versus the tires. The tires are Michelin Anaki Adventures and definitely appear to be a 70-30 bias towards on-road riding. I'd like to try a set of 50-50 tires and see how they improve the handling on dirt roads and trails. Suspension is provided by KYB in the form of a 160mm travel inverted fork in the front with full adjustability and a coilover shock in the rear that has preload and rebound adjustability and yields 150mm of rear wheel travel. Overall, I found the suspension compliant and comfortable on the road while still offering excellent support under hard cornering and braking. Off-road, the rear end felt good in all situations, but the fork felt harsh on sharper edge bumps and potholes. It wasn't terrible, and I hesitated to soften it up for fear of it becoming too soft on the pavement. Adventure motorcycles have become some of the most technologically packed units in any manufacturer's lineup, and the IBEX 800 Explorer is no exception for CFMOTO. This is basically a fully jammed adventure bike that is on par with only the very top of the line models from other manufacturers. It's littered with bits of cool technology that are included standard, like a quick shifter, rear radar system, heated grips, heated driver's seat, large full-color TFT touchscreen display with navigation and smartphone connectivity, fog lights, and electronic cruise control. However, CFMOTO has done with the IBEX 800 Explorer what they always seem to do with their ATVs and side-by-sides. They take factory-installed equipment one step further than the competition by including a full set of lockable hard luggage, skid plates, crash bars, and handguards. I searched around and tried to find another 800 class adventure bike that included this many features right from the factory, and I just couldn't find one, let alone find one in the same price category. Simply put, from the standpoint of included equipment for the money, the IBEX 800 Explorer is an outstanding value. But all this technology and all of these features are worthless if they don't combine to make an outstanding motorcycle. And in this case, I really think they do. If nothing else, they certainly combine to make an incredibly comfortable motorcycle. The seat height is very manageable for an average size adult. I'm 6'1" and could reach the ground on both sides with more than just my toes. The seat is comfortable for long distances, and it's heated if you ever feel you need that. Likewise, the heated grips are excellent and allowed me to forego my bulky gloves in favor of my lighter ones without freezing my digits off. I also really like the seat to handlebar measurement and felt like I could comfortably cruise in this position for hours when the opportunity presented itself. Wind protection was very good at any speed, and with the windshield adjusted all the way up, I found the wind buffeting was only really noticeable at speeds above 70 miles per hour or when following a bigger vehicle. I did notice a few things that became annoying the more I rode the IBEX though, mostly all related to the display and switchgear. First, the display has a glossy finish, which shows reflections and fingerprints like crazy. A matte finish screen protector would be a big upgrade. And second, the switchgear is overwhelming. There are just a lot of buttons. The important ones are actually quite intuitive, but the ones related to the display clutter up the left side switchgear a lot. I found I'd often hit the horn button when canceling the turn signals because the signal switch was jammed in between the D-pad and the horn. Third, I don't have a headset in my helmet, so I couldn't test the phone or music functions of this display. But I did get the GPS set up and found that it'll only give you route guidance if it's connected to your cell phone's 5G hotspot. It does have built-in GPS, but it doesn't include the ability to search for destinations unless it has internet access. I know there's a better way to do this. Finally, when you first turn the key on, the display shows a wide gauge layout that takes up the entire screen. It's big and really easy to read. Then after a few seconds, it switches to a smaller, more compact layout of the gauge that takes up the left hand of the display and shows the smart features of the display like the phone, music, and navigation and other stuff on the right hand portion. Sounds great, except that I could not figure out how to return to the full screen gauge display once it had defaulted to the split screen. Sometimes I just wanted the big gauge layout. If it is possible, I sure couldn't figure it out. So that's my list of things that I think could be improved. Now let's talk about the list of things I liked. And to start, I really like this quick shifter. My last sport bike had one and I loved it there, and I love it here too. Second, I really like the luggage. It looks as good as adventure bike luggage can look. The boxes are super easy to install and remove and lock on the bike for security, and the boxes themselves are pretty huge. I didn't always ride with them installed, but when I did need them, they were excellent. And third, I really like the price and the Canadian 5-year warranty. As I said earlier, if you compare the IBEX 800 Explorer to other middleweight adventure bikes, you'll find that none of them even come close to being as fully featured as this one. And that 5-year limited warranty only adds to it. So here's my final verdict on CFMOTO's 2024 IBEX 800 Explorer. First, it doesn't feel cheap or second rate at all. It feels every bit as high quality as most of its competition. Second, its on and off-road performance indicate that it's better suited to long distance trips on the tarmac with the occasional detour in the dirt versus extended backroad exploring sessions. And third, the overall riding experience of the IBEX 800 is a great one. It's comfortable, it's fun, it's convenient, and it's confidence inspiring. If you're searching for a new middleweight adventure bike, you absolutely have to give the CFMOTO IBEX 800 a serious look. After testing this one, I'm seriously thinking about one for myself.
Trail Tech is sponsored by Princess Auto. Make it work.
The Polaris Xpedition is a massively capable side-by-side. I mean, the only thing that I can compare this to is like an off-road Jeep or an SUV. But thanks to Polaris accessories, I can take the capabilities of this thing even further. Now to do that, I'm going to need to install the Rhino-Rack's large-size roof rack and roof rack mounts. Made from aluminum, this rack system is very easy to install thanks to the light weight, but also is very strong and long-lasting because it won't rust and degrade over time. It's also really nice to not be adding the extra weight of steel at the highest point of the side-by-side where it has more ability to negatively affect body roll and the vehicle characteristics. Rhino racks are available for many Polaris side-by-sides and utilize different mounts for your specific side-by-side. So the reason that we put the Rhino racks up on the roof, other than they look really cool and they're super functional, is the piece to resistance, which is the rooftop tent. Let's get that installed. Now the Rhino racks have a load limit of 150 pounds in motion, but 500 pounds static, so we can use this Polaris branded soft enclosure flip out tent on the Rhino racks. Able to accommodate up to 3 people and made out of water-resistant poly and ripstop canvas, the tent is a beautiful built piece of engineering. Built-in high-density foam mattress, LED rope lights that connect to the side-by-side with an included power cable, and even a telescopic ladder that stows within the tent storage system. This tent is the perfect way to utilize your Xpedition to the max and go to the next level in the outdoors. And when not in use, it all packs down to a compact size so you can still enjoy your Xpedition without having to remove the tent from the roof. Overall weight is just over 140 pounds and allows for up to 3 adults to be able to sleep comfortably and safely up off the ground. No more sleeping with roots under your paper-thin camping mattress or sleeping on unlevel cold ground that soaks up your body heat. The Xpedition is now the base for your next camping adventure. While I'm talking about adventure, I always like to add on some extra accessories to help us along the way, and when it comes to lighting, that's usually one of my number ones. Using a 50-inch light bar harness, we're able to tap into the Polaris Pulse Bar for easy electrical connections. No more 10mm nuts on the positive and negative battery posts and digging through to find the battery. Man, I love the Pulse Bar system. With an easy-to-clip-in illuminated switch and positive watertight connectors, I can easily get the wiring harness up to the rigid RDS 50-inch curved single-row LED light bar that mounts up and on the roof. Now the beauty thing is about this light bar and included mount is that it's specific to our Xpedition roofline and works in harmony with the Rhino racks, so nothing interferes and there's no compromise, which can be a massive issue if you're trying to fit up a random light bar and mounting it to your roof rack equipped Polaris. So knowing that it fits is a huge benefit to me. Now if I'm gonna go camping with 3 people for a weekend, I'm gonna need enough food and drinks to keep them happy, so I snagged up a Polaris 60-quart North Star cooler to do just that. These coolers are available in 15, 30, 60, and 105 quart options and aren't just for show. These things hold ice for 30 hours longer than the competition. Don't believe me? Well, I've been using North Star coolers personally for years, and the 2-inch thick insulation is incredible and impresses me every single time. Plus, they're far cheaper than the questionably tall, unshaven Reclusive brand. They're even IGBC Bear Resistant certified. Let's hope we don't need to verify that though. I also added in a 60-quart cooler divider to keep things from moving around too much, and I wanted to add in the North Star Cooler seat cushion. It's an easy-to-install, snap-on cushion that turns your cooler into a comfy campsite seat. I mean, you're bringing it with you, why not get the most out of it? With foam handles on rope carry straps, rubber-mounted locking straps, and aluminum pin latches, this is one very sturdy built cooler. Now, we wouldn't really be heading out on an adventure if we didn't at least partly prepare for something to go wrong down the road mechanically. And we all know we can find a big hill or a mud hole and forget to shift to low range here and there. And if we do that, having a spare Polaris engineered drive belt along for the ride is not just smart, it's a necessity. On top of that, I always like to have a jump starter handy because we can sometimes forget about running in the stereo too long at night around the campfire or using the LED light bar with the engine off and wake up to a drained battery. The Noco GB40 is a glove box sized, perfect jump starter with a 1000 amp jump start capacity and has a built-in USB charger so that you can hook up your phone, electrical devices, or power the lights inside your rooftop tent. And it also has a built-in 100 lumen LED flashlight for around the campsite or boosting in the dark. Oh, and it's a smart booster too, so you can't hook it up backwards because of its reverse polarity protection. Now this Polaris Xpedition is a pretty well-equipped rig now. I mean, if you think about it, there's 5 seats inside. With the rear seats folded down, I can fit a 2-person mattress in the back of this and 3 people in the rooftop tent. With our cooler and all of our accessories, that means that we could head out with 5 people and actually camp out overnight over the weekend. Now that is pretty cool.
DIRT TRAX has been sponsored by Kawasaki. Let the good times roll. And BRP Performance Exhaust, built for the victory lap. And by Hercules Tire, ride in our strength.
Most of the time when we talk about niche vehicles, we're talking about ones that are mud specific or tailored specifically for hunting or for sport riding. Today though, we're talking about a totally different kind of niche vehicle. Honda's Pioneer 700 4P DLX fits into a corner of the industry that nothing else does. It does things no other vehicle in the industry does, and I think it appeals to a buyer that nothing else in the industry can. And all of this is thanks to its cargo bed that tilts, but also hides two easily convertible rear passenger seats. When the bed is in cargo mode, you can haul up to 1,000 pounds, and you can tow up to 1,500 pounds with the 2-inch hitch receiver. Now these numbers are interesting because the cargo capacity is in line with other full-size utility side-by-sides like a Ranger XP, but the towing capacity is in line with other mid-size side-by-sides like the Ranger 570. So in terms of utility capabilities, it kind of fits right in between these two categories. With that said, there aren't too many jobs you won't be able to do around your property with these specs. I could certainly do everything I needed to do with it with pounds to spare. The way the cargo bed tilts inside the rear roll cage means it's completely independent of the cage itself. And the way it converts from utility to recreation is really interesting and quite an engineering marvel. You have to make sure the bed is fully locked down. Then you simply open the perfectly integrated and nearly invisible rear doors, fold the seat back up till it latches, drop down the lumbar portion of the backrest, and latch the stationary portion of the rear 3-point seat belts. In a matter of about 90 seconds, you can go from a true utility side-by-side to one that's ready to haul the whole family on an epic adventure. Now I do need to point out a few realities of this setup that a buyer is going to need to be aware of. First, if you're going to be hauling sand or gravel or any other loose materials in the cargo bed, you're going to want to get the bed liner available from Honda so that that material doesn't foul up any of the seat conversion mechanisms. Second, the rear seats are capable of hauling a full-size adult, but not really well suited to it. The floor in the rear is really high and there's not much space back there, so there's almost no legroom. The seats are comfortable, but you're sitting directly on top of the rear axles, so the upward travel of the rear of the vehicle when you hit a bump is directed straight up your back. Now I'm not saying these rear seats are bad. For a smaller rider, they're actually just fine. But for a system that converts so seamlessly, there has to be some give and take. All I'm saying is you need to consider who you plan to have riding back here. The Pioneer 700 does look similar to the 1000, but in reality it couldn't be more different. The powertrain consists of a 675cc single-cylinder engine mated to a 3-speed automotive-style automatic transmission. Now this is the same engine and transmission as what's found in the new Rubicon 700, and it's very nearly identical to that of the older Rincon, so it has been around a while. There are two transmission modes, automatic, which does exactly what you think it does, and manual, which requires you to flick the paddle shifters to initiate up and down shifts. Now I pretty much always leave it in automatic and just use the override function of the paddle shifters to shift up when it hasn't decided to just yet. With only 3 speeds and no low range, first gear is really low. When you take off from a dead stop, it shifts almost immediately, but it's great for hauling and towing. Second gear is much longer, and the shift programming likes to hold second way up into the higher RPMs before shifting into third, which allows for a top speed of 65 miles an hour. At easy trail speeds, the transmission likes to be in second gear with the occasional upshift to third, which the 675cc single's excellent bottom end torque allowed it to pull at very low RPM. Now I wouldn't call this transmission sporty, but the reality is the Pioneer 700 isn't really intended to be a sport side-by-side. So when it's used as intended, I have no complaints. Likewise, the suspension is clearly targeted at hauling heavy loads and easy trail rides. Double A-arms produce 7.9 inches of travel up front and 9.1 inches in the rear. Now the front has a set of dual rate springs that are not preload adjustable, and out back you'll find a set of single rate springs that are snail cam preload adjustable. When you're working, the suspension setup is more than adequate, and I never felt like I needed to adjust the preload on the rear shocks any higher than the softest setting, which is how it comes set up anyway. On the trail though, I found the ride to be quite stiff. Now not unbearably so, but you wouldn't describe it as plush, and I don't think it's a suspension travel issue. I think the base level damping on the shocks needs to be softened up just a bit. That would make a huge difference. The rest of the Pioneer 700 4P DLX is a mix of high-end and budget-conscious parts. The headlights are halogen and have only one setting. The 4x4 system is operated by a lever on the dash and has 3 settings, 2, 4, and 4 lock, and the whole thing rolls on a set of 25-inch Blackstone tires. However, the 12-inch wheels are great-looking aluminum units, the front bumper is big and burly, the digital gauge tilts with the steering wheel, and the box includes LED lights. There are also 12-volt outlets to power your accessories, half doors, and high quality, if not a little overwhelming netting that is removable if you prefer. Now, I studied all the other utility side-by-side manufacturers' websites to see if I could find any other model that has the same mix of capability, versatility, and features as the Pioneer 700 4P, and I just couldn't find any. There are no other side-by-sides on the market that have the same mix of towing and hauling specs, width and wheelbase numbers, and certainly a cargo box that features comfortable seating yet still retains its tilt functionality. Well, I mean, other than the Pioneer 1000 5P, of course, but that's in a completely different class altogether. That's why I think the Pioneer 700 4P is such a great unit. Yes, it is a niche vehicle, but it's a niche that appeals to a wide range of side-by-side buyers. Its near seamless mix of 2-seat functionality and 4-seat recreation is something you simply can't get anywhere else.